earth is thirsty, my son.
In the village of Masvingo, a small town with big dreams located in the south of Zimbabwe, lived a young woman named Anesu. She was pragmatic and fiercely intelligent, but her spirit was being tested. It was a year of severe drought, a year that baked the land into a canvas of cracked terracotta under a merciless sun. For Anesu, the crisis was immediate and personal, for her younger brother, Kuda, lay gravely ill with a fever that only water could quench. Each morning began with the same desperate ritual, scraping the last murky drops from the bottom of the great clay pot, giving the cleanest portion to Kuda in a silent prayer, and then filtering the gritty remainder through a cloth for herself to drink. Driven by a love as fierce as the sun was cruel, Anesu refused to simply wait for the sky to change its mind.
This drought can take the water,
she devised a logical plan.
But it will not take my will.
A perilous but possible exodus to the distant riverlands, and presented it to the village elders.
I have drawn a path.
In the stark shadow of a great, leafless baobab tree, she knelt and drew her map of hope in the dust. But the elders were men who trusted the wisdom of their ancestors more than the maps of the young, and they saw her plan as the folly of a child. Even her own father, the respected elder Chiremba, was caught between his daughter's reason and his people's traditions.
The bones of our grandfathers are buried in this soil. They did not run. They endured.
It is not that your plan lacks wisdom, Anesu. It is that it lacks faith. The ancestors test us. It is not that your plan lacks wisdom, Anesu. It is that it lacks faith. The ancestors test us.
And he could not bring himself to abandon the land of their grandfathers. But faith was not filling the granaries, and the bonds of the village were beginning to crack under the strain. One restless night, Anesu's fears were confirmed when she discovered a neighbor, Themba, secretly unearthing a small, hoarded stash of grain. The confrontation was not one of anger, but of shared, quiet desperation. The man's confession of his children's hunger was a reflection of her own fears for Kuda, and she saw then that the drought was not just killing the land, it was poisoning the soul of their community. She left him with the quiet truth about their shared fate, the discovery, a heavy stone in her heart.
The village starves together, or it dies alone.
It was into this world of dust and quiet desperation that a stranger arrived. He appeared not on the path, but out of the shimmering heat haze itself, a mythic figure who walked with an unnatural purpose across the baked earth. As he reached the village threshold, his strange energy seemed to drain away, and he collapsed face down in a puff of red dust. He did not arrive as a traveler seeking aid, but as an omen, a living question mark delivered to their doorstep.
Are you afraid it will break?
When the stranger Mvura awoke in Anesu's hut, it was not as a grateful victim, but as a man of unnerving calm and perception. He saw that the thirst in their village was for more than just water, it was for hope. When he finally stood before the gathered, suspicious people, he did not offer them magic or miracles. Instead, he made a powerful, enigmatic promise. He told them they had forgotten the song of the rain, and he, a stranger from the shimmer, had come to help them remember it.
You ask the wrong question. You ask who I am. You should ask who you have become. This is a vein of the earth. It is clogged. Her lifeblood cannot flow. You have taken our water and our shade. Who are you? What spirit, good or ill, brings you to our dying land? You ask the wrong question. You ask who I am. You should ask who you have become. This is a vein of the earth. It is clogged. Her lifeblood cannot flow.
In the days that followed, Mvura began to teach the village a new kind of prayer, one spoken not with voices but with hands. He led them to a long-forgotten irrigation channel choked with weeds and baked earth and told them they must cleanse the very veins of the land. He had them rebuild the communal granary, explaining it as building a worthy vessel for the ancestors. At first they were skeptical, but led by Mvura's own example, they set to work. A new sound returned to Masvingo, the rhythmic thump of tools and the harmony of work songs.
Sing the song your mother taught you for the harvest.
From a distance, Anesu watched. Her logical mind saw only practical repairs, not spiritual rituals, yet she could not deny the results. The village was coming alive, and at night, Mvura would gather them by the fire to sing the old songs, restoring not just their structures, but their spirit. Most importantly, in her own hut, Anesu saw her brother Kuda growing stronger, a tangible miracle she could not explain away. One night, Anesu sought out Mvura by the crackling fire, determined to confront him. She came to him with the sharp edge of her logic, accusing him not of dark magic, but of clever manipulation, of being a psychologist, not a prophet. Mvura did not deny it. He met her truth not with a defense, but with a simple parable. He spoke of giving a sick child bitter medicine and how it is a kinder act to stir it first into a spoonful of honey. He explained that her truth was a bitter medicine the village refused to swallow, and he was simply the honey they needed to be convinced to save themselves. He left her there in the firelight with a quiet, impossible question. Which is the greater cruelty, a lie that leads to life or a truth that leads to death? Anesu had no answer.
I don't trust that Mvura. I don't trust him one bit.
I've been watching you. The eye vein of the earth is an old irrigation ditch. The eye-worthy vessel is a granary to protect from pests.
You see clearly. More clearly than any of them.
If a child is sick and will not take the bitter medicine that will save her, do you force it down her throat?
And what happens when the honey runs out? What happens when they have done all this work and the sky remains empty?
My story has them working, sharing, singing. My story has your brother walking again.
The rift between Anesu's truth and the village's newfound hope soon became a chasm that swallowed her whole. The first to turn from her was her own brother Kuda, who now saw her warnings not as wisdom, but as a poison to the hope that was healing him. Then her father, Elder Chiremba, commanded her to be silent for the good of the community, choosing the collective spirit over his daughter's lonely logic. Soon, the entire village began to shun her. Conversations would stop when she approached. Mothers would pull their children away. She was an outcast, the one person who could not share in their joy. Her isolation was made complete when an old friend fearfully offered her a gourd of water out of pity, an act Anesu met with quiet, steely pride, sealing her place as a pariah.
Father, he admitted it. It's a trick.
I have seen men die with the truth in their hearts.
the midday share. I brought you some. I am not thirsty.
Then, late one afternoon, it happened. A single dark cloud appeared on the horizon. A sight so foreign, it caused the entire village to fall silent in a collective gasp of disbelief. It was soon joined by another and another, until the sky was a turbulent ceiling of deep, promising gray. A cool wind, smelling of ozone and wet earth, swept through the village, and the fragile hope erupted into a fever of pure, primal joy. The people wept, they danced, they embraced, their despair washed away by the promise of the coming storm. In their ecstasy, they lifted Mvura onto their shoulders, no longer a strange guide, but a living God in their eyes. Watching from the lonely edge of the celebration, Anesu felt her own wall of logic finally begin to crumble. A single tear of terrifying, overwhelming hope traced a path through the dust on her cheek. But the promise was a lie. The beautiful clouds soured in the sky, glowing with a sickly, hellish red light. The cool wind turned hot and began to carry a sharp grit. On the horizon, a churning red monster appeared, a moving mountain range of sand that rose to swallow the sky. It was not a storm of life, but a scouring wind of death. The haboob hit the village like a physical blow, plunging the world into a roaring red darkness. In minutes, it was over. The roar was replaced by a silence more terrible than any sound. The village was a ruin. The channels were filled, the granary was torn apart, every symbol of their hard-won hope had been violently erased. As the villagers slowly rose like statues of clay, their grief curdled into a cold, murderous rage. One by one they turned, and their collective gaze, full of betrayal, fell upon one man, Mvura. As a cold, grey dawn broke over the ruined village, the people's grief from the night before had curdled into a silent, unified rage. They emerged from their huts like specters and formed a menacing circle around Mvura, who stood waiting by the great baobab tree. Into the circle stepped Elder Chiremba, his face aged a decade overnight. He was no longer a measured leader, but a broken man, and he gave voice to the village's agony, his words a raw cry of betrayal for the lie they had been told. His pain ignited the mob. They surged forward with their tools raised as weapons, ready to exact payment for their shattered hope. Chiremba, channeling all their fury, raised his elder's staff to deliver the first blow, but the immense strain was too much. The staff fell from his grasp, and the old man crumpled to the dust, the symbol of the old way finally shattering under its own weight. The mob froze, their rage momentarily broken by shock. Through the paralyzed crowd, Anesu rushed to her fallen father. Cradling his head, she looked from his slack face to the lost and hate-filled eyes of her people, and in that instant, a terrifying clarity took hold. Her grief became fuel. She rose and turned to face them, no longer an outcast, but a leader. Her voice, quiet yet powerful, cut through their rage with a single command to stop. She then gave them a new and difficult truth, that the stranger had indeed lied, but his lie had led them to the greater truth of their own strength. She reminded them that it was their hands that cleared the channels and their backs that raised the granary. She turned their blame into a challenge, urging them to see themselves not as victims of a false prophet, but as survivors who had already proven their will to live. Then, turning her back on them all, she picked up a shovel and walked toward the devastation, ready to begin.
We can make the earth yield. I choose to make the earth yield. The earth takes, the hands build. The earth takes. can wait for
It
the sky
began
to
with the
weep,
lonely
or we
sound of
can make
one
the earth
shovel
yield.
against the
I
sand-packed
choose to make
earth.
the earth yield.
For a long moment, Anesu worked alone, a single piston of defiance against the inertia of despair. Then, a second sound joined hers. It was Kuda, her brother, his loyalty absolute. He was followed by a shamed but determined Themba, seeking his atonement in the soil. Their actions broke the spell. One by one, then in a great wave, the entire village surged forward to join the work.
We can wait for the
Anesu
sky to weep,
began a
or
simple
we can
chant,
make the earth yield.
a song not of prayer,
choose to make
but
the
of
earth yield.
purpose. It became their new anthem, a song of resilience. They worked through the day and into the deep night, their torches a constellation of fire in the darkness. This was their true ritual, and in the forge of that night's labor, they hammered out not just a repaired village, but a new and unbreakable community. After the fever of the night's work, a profound peace settled over the village as dawn approached. The channels were clear, the granary was secure, and the people were utterly spent but whole. Anesu stood on a small rise, looking over them with a fierce, quiet pride. In that moment of stillness, a single, fat drop of water landed on her forehead like a startling, intimate touch. She looked up at the calm, silver-gray sky as another drop fell, then another. A gentle, steady, soaking rain began to fall. There was no wild celebration this time, only a quiet, collective awe. The villagers slowly rose, turning their faces to the sky, letting the clean water wash away the dirt and the pain in a silent, sacred baptism. Across the square, Anesu's eyes met Mvura's, and they shared a look of mutual respect, an unspoken acknowledgement that the source of the gift no longer mattered. Months later, the land was reborn. The baobab tree was crowned in green, maize grew tall in the fields, and a clear stream flowed where there was once only dust. Anesu, now the respected leader and storyteller of her thriving village, sat with the children on the stream's bank. Mvura, his work complete, had vanished as mysteriously as he arrived. A young child looked up at Anesu and asked the question they all carried. Was the Rainmaker's magic real? Anesu smiled, her expression filled with a deep and gentle wisdom. She told the child that Mvura was a clever storyteller who had reminded them of an old and powerful secret, that the real magic was never in the sky, but had been in their own hands and in their own voices, working together all along.
Mvura.